Oh. What's happening, everybody? Welcome to Barnabas Brushes. My name is Patrick. I play the character of Barnabas Quint on the Soul Severed campaign for Elite Encounters. I also am now the GM for the Bloodlords campaign, also on the Elite Encounters channel. You can check out those campaigns live every Monday for Bloodlords at 6:30 Eastern, Tuesday at 6 o'clock Eastern for the Soul Severed campaign. Both of those are live play Pathfinder 2nd Edition campaigns on Twitch. You can catch us there. Again, the channel is linked below. Check out Elite Encounters. We're also on YouTube. We simulcast on YouTube for all of our live play shows. What I do here on Barnabas Brushes is I paint miniatures to use for those live play shows on the Elite Encounters channel. I painted a number of PCs the last few weeks. Yes, yeah, potentially to kill. That's ultimately what every GM tries to do, right? No, sufficiently challenge you, make you feel tense, make you feel a sense of horror. And speaking of horror, Bloodlords campaign is a horror-themed campaign set in the undead nation of Geb. Now, last time we played on Monday, that group of adventurers have followed some clues on a mystery that they have uncovered in the nation of Geb. Taking a look at, well, I'm glad someone out there is entertained, Jinx. Uh, Hopefully, more and more people will have the same sentiment as they watch. But last week, they followed those clues to a tavern and brewery after handily defeating the barkeep and some of the brewers. They made their way into the brewery proper, where they have started to assault the brewing staff. And as that fight kind of kicked off, they noticed out of the corner of their eye there is a pen where a number of zombies are being held at bay by a very shoddy gate. Um, that would be awesome. Yeah. Uh, I don't know. Is that like watching paint dry? 3D printing millimeter by millimeter is like watching paint dry, maybe? Yeah, okay. Although that is pretty entertaining to go to the local computer hardware store and watch their demo 3D printers print. There's something kind of relaxing about it, I guess. But they did notice in that gate, back to the zombies, that there were a number of zombie shamblers kind of trapped behind that gate, and two very large brutes. Now they've seen zombie brutes before, zombie hulks that are kind of manning the gates at Berlin Haudoli's Manor, but now they see behind this gate a couple of zombie brutes uh, that are trying desperately to bash through that containment. Um, yeah. So this model is a WizKids Zombie Brute miniature that I've painted up for the show. So what I did today is I went and got a second copy of that miniature. Uh, this is how the WizKids miniatures look right out of the package. They are pre-primed. This one is from the Pathfinder Battles line from WizKids. So these are specifically sculpted and printed to look like monsters from the Monster Core or the bestiaries that have come out over the years for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So that's where I got the idea for the color scheme for the miniature right here. So you can see it's got like some almost normal flesh tones, but with some very bad kind of bruising and rotting around some of the more open, festering wounds. And this guy has ripped his own arm off, all the better to beat Sunshine over the head with. I mean, not Sunshine, Ophelia. I mean, not Ophelia, but Mert, or anybody that decides to tangle with this zombie brute and his buddy. So we're going to spend today's stream to recreate this model here on the right, this paint scheme on this model here on the left. And I'm going to show you just how easy it is with Army Painter speed paints. This is right out of the package. I just opened the package right before the stream. You can see it's primed and kind of a grayish white. So I'm not going to start off with slap chopping this. The texture and the prime of the WizKids miniature on these larger miniatures is perfect for speed painting. They are going to be a little bit brighter than a slap chopped model, which is why you get this really kind of, I don't know if I'd call this guy bright, but definitely interesting color schemes that are popping out here. So let's get started. So I'll start yapping, stop yapping, and start slapping some paint around. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do with this particular model is the bones that are sticking out in various places on the creature. Right here where he ripped his arm off, you have his part of his humerus still sticking out. And then over here on the stump, you have the radius and ulna, where he just ripped it off at the elbow. He's got a broken fibula sticking out here, and he's got some ribs. It's interesting that this particular guy has ribs all the way down into his guts. That is not anatomically correct, but we'll paint him just the same. So my go-to color for bones, you probably all already know, is pallid bone. By the way, if you are new here to the stream, be sure to give a shout out in chat, say hello. I think everybody is accounted for in chat, though, if I'm looking at it. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. There might be 1 or 2 people out there that are not hitting me up in chat. That's fine if you want to just kind of lurk and watch. But while you're there, if you haven't already, please hit that follow button. We are working to build up a follower population here on this channel. And once we hit 50 followers, I'm going to be giving away a custom painted WizKids Beholder miniature, drawn at random from those 50 followers. One lucky winner will get their miniature painted to their specifications and sent out to them for their own private collection to kill their own players with. Okay, so we're going to start off on these bones. And I'm going to use a very inexpensive golden Taklon brush to work with the speed paints because of their flowing nature. And we're just going to get a brush load of this pallid bone and just really throw it on this bone here. It's going to kind of go on with this brown color, but as it dries, it'll have a kind of an off-white bone color. The brown will stay in the shadows, just kind of creating this sense of shadow and highlight on these bones. Really simple to just color in the line, so to speak, with your brush. You don't want to get this paint anywhere where you're going to be putting different colors, because these paints are translucent and will show through each other. Unless that's what you're trying to do, is blend the colors. You can certainly feel free to do that. I am not doing that. I am keeping my colors distinct on this model. Okay, so we've got the fibula, humerus, radius ulna. We got the ribs. We'll get the ribs here in a second. I'm also going to get his teeth real quick. And to do that, we're just going to kind of run the tip of the brush over the edge of the teeth here. We don't want to super load on the bristles for the teeth. Just want enough to give them a little bit of coloration. Because what we'll do later is we'll go over those teeth and pick out some highlights and make them a little bit brighter than the bone. But right now that looks pretty sloppy on the teeth. That's fine. We're going to play with that around the face here in a little bit. Yeah, I've noticed that, Sunshine. You have a very good knack for taking your speed paints and blending them together to create new colors, and it makes some for some very interesting new palettes on the creatures you've painted. It's very cool. And we are going to do some paint mixing here, not necessarily blending on the model, but mixing some colors together to create some of the tints that we want on this model. Now in the ribs here, I'm not too worried if I get a little bit out of the lines, because this guy has been really damaged heavily in his abdomen. So if there's a little bit of this pallid bone color floating around where maybe it doesn't look like it would go, that's okay, because we're going to play around with these guts inside this abdomen here in a little bit. Okay, I think that's all the exposed bone on the model, if I remember right. Yep. All right, so we're off to the races. That's one color there. Now what I'm going to do next while these bones are drying, I kind of want to not paint around them because I don't want the colors to wick into each other and start bleeding into each other. So I'm going to go in a different area on the model, which means I'm going to work on this little loincloth or whatever here. The original model has kind of this army green colored cloth. Hey, welcome in. Thanks for joining, Mike. So with this one, we're still going to have these guts kind of draped out over the loincloth here. So we want a color that's going to kind of contrast against that, but also still kind of have this still kind of dirty, raised from the dead look to it. So I think according to the paint tools I use, I have a very interesting app called what is it called? Paint Rack. And with Paint Rack, you can keep track of all of the manufacturers and bottles of paint you have, You can scan the barcode right on your bottles, and it will put that into your library of colors. So your whole paint collection is on your phone, and then you can pull up a color you want to work with. And then there are tools that give you complementary colors, contrasting colors, triad colors, all for that color. So you can kind of create these visually appealing and sort of eye-catching, popping sort of color schemes. So the interesting thing about these the guts that we're going to do, the color that they say to contrast against it is like a teal blue. I don't think I want to go teal. That's not going to look a lot like something that's been in the ground for a while. Um, but I do want it to be a different color from the other guy's loincloth, so I have identifiers, especially if they're on the table at the same time, and I want to keep track of that creature's hit points. I want them to look different. So I think what I'm going to do is keeping with that kind of bluish contrast, but this time I'm going to do a bluish gray with a cultist cloak. Will it be the right choice? We'll see. Let's just put a few drops in my hard palette over here, and then we're going to lay that down on his loincloth. I want to be careful not to get this again like anywhere we want to go with like skin, because it's so dark. It'll basically be come right through any light colored paints. Let's get this edge here. And just right here underneath where those guts are draped out over his belly. And as this dries, those heavier pigments will kind of fall down into those deeper sort of cuts in the texture of the model, creating that sense of shadow. The lighter pigments in the paint will stay on top, creating the highlights all in one go. And you can always go back and hit this up with an even lighter color if you want to brighten it up a little bit. But as we've seen on Bloodlords, our team of adventurers tend to very quickly dispatch their foes. So for these monster models, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time, uh, painting them when they're just going to be on the table for all of 3 rounds before they're mushed. But if I wanted to, up the quality of the paint job, I certainly can do that by adding some additional highlights. And because I'm a little bit OCD, I also get the interior of the loincloth that's hanging down. Even though you won't really see this on camera, probably. That would be a very interesting shot to do an upskirt on the zombie brute. But for me, I want to get all the surfaces so that if I pick this up and look at it, it looks realistic to me. As realistic as a fantasy monster can look, I guess. The trick is to get the brush up in there without getting it all over the skin of the legs. Okay, that gets me right up to them guts. Let's do a little bit of touch up on the edges here. Clean this up. Okay. Now you can see that the bone sections that we did earlier are already starting to dry down, and you can see those kind of highlights define themselves along the edge of those broken bones on the kind of those knobs, those condyles. Yes, that's very true. Some of my poor ghoul barkeeps never even got to have a turn before they were unceremoniously slaughtered. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go in and add some of the, we're going to basically color in the wounds. And we're going to do that with kind of a blood red color that will ultimately end up getting toned down when we do the skin over it. We don't want it to be too garishly bright red, right? These wounds aren't fresh. But when we start off, yeah, this is it. So I'm going to use blood red for the wounds. And when this first goes on, it'll be kind of a bright red. But that's okay. We'll tone that down. Very similar to kind of what we did here with this guy. It's a little bit more darker. The guts are kind of have more of a pink to them, and we'll definitely recreate that. So all these speed paints have a couple metal beads in them, basically mixer balls, to resuspend the pigment in the medium. So you always want to give them a really good shake before you drop out a few drops for painting. And now we're just going to go around every place that there's like a wound on this guy. We're going to basically just slap this right into that wound. And don't worry if you get a little bit outside of the lines because it's a wound. It's not going to be, you're going to have blood everywhere. I'm going to get it all around the edges of the, where the flesh is puckered up around the wound. Got some right here. Definitely over here with the poor leg has been broken. Got some slashes over this thigh here. Maybe some hacks with an axe or something. kind of fill those gashes with this blood red color. Uh, it's pretty garish right now, but like I said, it'll get toned down with the skin. It's especially garish against this white prime. I'm not going to really get into the abdomen yet because all these guts we're going to do with a kind of more of a intestinal pink color. But the edges I want to get with this red. Okay. I mean, this guy has been hacked to bits. We definitely want to get his stump, but we do have these slashing wounds here. He's got some punctures. Poor dude's seen some shit. And you can see I'm not really too concerned if I'm quote unquote staying in the lines on the wounds because they're going to be messy. Some of these deeper wounds I might load my brush up even more to really get the pigment in there into those deep crevices to kind of show that there's texture to that flesh underneath the wound. Right, that was really loaded up on this ragged stump here. And where he ripped it off here. There are not a lot of large-sized zombie miniatures that I've found in the kind of the larger miniature lines like Reaper, But when I found this WizKids model of this dude that had ripped his own arm off, I was like, yep, I'm going to get a couple of those. I actually picked up this second one today. Okay, I think I've got all the wounds. Uh, and if I miss some, I can go back later and add to them. Oh, yeah, there's one little tiny guy there. Back at this calf. Boom. Okay. All right. So we'll clean out that brush. And now that my loincloth looks pretty well dried, I hit it with some touch up here. Now let's work on the guts. So to get this kind of nasty intestinal pink color like we did on our original model here, we're going to take some of this blood red that we have dipped out already, and we are going to add that to a pink. This is pretty fun because what we're going to do is we're going to take a pastel speed paint called Princess Pink to make our guts. So the pastels are a little bit more pigment heavy to kind of give us that, I don't know, like almost like a chalky um, color with the pastels. So I'm going to take a few drops of that pink, and then I'm just going to add brush loads of the red that I was using, that blood red, and slowly work that in off my palette to create the pink I want. So to do that, I'm going to get like a brush that I don't have, I don't care a whole lot about, a good beater brush that I can use to just kind of mix this paint in the palette. So I'll kind of show you what I'm doing here. I've got a few drops of this pastel pink, and I'm just going to grab a brush load of the blood red, just kind of swirl it in until it gets the color I want. And it's not quite there. Okay. That is pretty close to what I want. It looks almost like a salmon-y color, maybe. And now I'm going to take that and I'm just going to like just plop that all over these guts really thick. And what'll happen as this dries is the pink, pastel pink color will stay on top. The blood red that we've mixed in there will kind of take the heavier pigments into the bottom. And then with this, just to give it that little bit of extra um, grossness factor, I guess, when this is totally dry, we'll hit it with a red wash. Either I can make a wash out of my blood red speed paint by adding medium to it, thinning it out, or I can use Army Painter's red tone wash. I'm just going to kind of soak those guts in that pink color. Make sure we get all the bottom kind of oils of intestines down here, get the bottom of them. We don't want any of that white primer showing anymore as we paint this. Okay. All right, so we're partway there on our guts, so that's going to dry down pink, and then we'll hit it with that red tone to kind of give it that real kind of bloody intestinal look there through the middle. And now we can really go to town on the rest of the figure, which for the most part is all just naked skin. So, interestingly enough, because we're going to play around with some bruising and texturing later, we're going to start off with a kind of a fair skin tone, um, and that's going to be our peachy flesh. So he doesn't look very peachy to me. He's definitely got this bruising and kind of sickliness going on here. So. And the trick to getting that is to not thin this paint down and lay it on really thick. Um, to get these kind of broader pieces, I'm not going to use a fine tip brush for applying paint across these broad kind of swaths of texture. I'm going to use a flat brush that's, could be used for dry brushing for sure, but also for a very controlled application of large swaths of paint. Now I could do that with a big bellied, big tipped brush. Something like this. But I had better control with a flat brush with speed paint. So that's what I'm going to use here. And I'm just going to lay it on all over, pretty heavy-handed, to let that kind of brown pigment flow into those darker areas of skin. Just really ham-handed with the application. And if I get a little bit into those wounds where I painted them red, oh well. That's just going to kind of brown it to make those wounds look not as garish and fresh. And that's kind of what I want. So, I mean, I just really slap it in. And you can see that, the texture, the sculpt. Look at all that texture on the skin back there. That's just taking up that pigment from the speed paint. And I'm not a huge fan, honestly, of WizKids models for medium-sized creatures, like for, you know, characters, PCs. But for big monsters and like all the texture that they have on these models for larger monsters, I love it. Because you can speed paint them right out of the package. No need for slap chop priming them or, um, a lot of pre work. You just open them up and go to town. Oh no, I went over those staples. Well, guess what? I'm going to paint those later when this dries. I'm not worried about that. If I really want to have some fun with this guy, after I do all the bruising and texturing of the skin, I can take one of my brushes or even a toothbrush, like something that's a little bit more flayed out, and do some blood spatter, where you just kind of like uh, flick the bristles of your brush towards the model and just create these random spatter effects. It's really fun to create blood spatter patterns like that. And it turns out a lot more natural looking than just trying to do polka dots with your brush, just toot, 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 to make blood spatter. Just spattering. Go full Dexter on that. I mean, look how the speed paint just goes right into the areas between the fingers, creating those shadows without, having to layer 3 or 4 different colors to create that effect. How cool is it to sit down? We've been going 45 minutes and this guy's half done. Okay. I'm going to need a little bit more of the skin color, but before I do that, I noticed a couple places where the wounds need a little bit more wound to them, like this big wound here. Some more of that peachy flesh. And we'll do work on the legs a little bit while we wait for that red to dry up there on the wound. Usually put out maybe 5, 6 drops at a time if I know I'm working on a big model. Um, it doesn't fill my palette well, but it's enough to work with without it drying up. and I can always add more. And then you want to try to not waste a lot of this paint if you can. So I try to only pour out what I need. That doesn't always work. But at almost $5 a bottle, kind of want to keep it low waste. This paint has a tendency to flow. So if you're holding it in one position for a long time, it might start to pool in areas. And you can always get your brush and just push it around so it doesn't create a big pool of, the dark color, unless you want a pool of the dark color in that area, which in some of these I do, like some of these spaces between the muscles where the ankle is bent. I want that to be really dark. But this is a lot of fun for me to just slap this on here and watch the sculpt take the paint and all of the musculature that the sculptor tried to convey, all the texture, the wounds, the hair, whatever you got on your model. With speed paint, you just put the paint on there and the paint does the work and it preserves that texture of the sculpt without, like, when I would layer paint, there were times when I would, like, once you get so many layers on something, trying to recreate the idea of shadow and highlight where the sculpt is, you lose some of that detail, some of that integrity. But with speed paint, I think with one go, you keep every little wrinkle, every little crease and fold in the skin. And the sculpt looks, I don't know, like more true to the artist's intent, I think. When I look back at some of my layer painted models, I'm kind of like, wanting to do it again with speed paint just to see if I can make it better. Get right up in there. Any place I want the skin to be darker, I'll just hit it with another coat, another layer right over the dried paint, and it'll darken up and give it more of that kind of old brown, semi-rotting flesh. But I think the real kicker here is when I looked at the art um, from the monster core for this creature, was that purplish blue bruising around the wounds that really conveyed the fact that this was dead flesh. And I tried to recreate that as best I could with my tools. But I'm not sure this guy is going to be dry enough to do that on today's stream. So we'll probably just talk about it. comparison shot of the finished model and the one I'm working on. Is that what you're saying? So right now, this guy is just kind of some skin, right? And these pink guts. But on this one, I'm getting right up to. You can see I went in around some of the edges of those wounds and added some like bruising color, that kind of purple, blue, gray color. And I did that with speed paints. Just kind of did a glaze over that flesh. So like right now, you can see it's just skin color right there. Oh yeah, yeah, that's a good idea for a stream. Maybe grab an old model that I did layer painting on, and then speed paint uh, another copy of that model. So yeah, we're getting close to the top of the hour, so I won't have time to do the bruising on the air for this today's model. And you can tell he's still kind of drying too. But ultimately, all right, there we go. To create this look, I took, um, this is going to be interesting to go over this, but I basically took a pastel blue, here we go, pastel blue, indigo, some lavender for that purpling, and hit it with occultist cloak to kind of gray it up, to darken it, to make it that bruised color, right? That kind of grayish, dead flesh color. But you still want a little bit of that blue and purple kind of tone to it. So in one well, I just kind of mix these colors together. So it's going to be occultist cloak, pastel lavender, pastel indigo, and those three together created that bruising. And I thinned it out with a few drops of speed paint medium, just to kind of make it more of a glaze than, which is like a little bit thicker than a wash. And then I just slapped it in areas that I thought need to look bruised, and tried to kind of use the artwork as a model. So anywhere that like there's big wounds, there's going to be a lot of that bruising. Um, and then in places where the flesh wrinkles a lot, like so it's in the toes, etc., etc. Oh yeah, Paint Rack is a huge tool. Be sure to check that out. And as you get paint, you can just use the camera on your phone to scan the barcode. The app will catalog that paint for you, and then you just go in your library and say, you know what, I need something that's going to contrast speed paint blood red. And you go into the little dropper bottle icon under your speed paint blood red, and it has all the color theory tools and like what's complementary, what's contrasting, what is across from it on the color wheel, which is your contrast, and then complementary are going to be like on either side of it, 1/3 away from the color wheel. It's all in the app. The instructions in the app kind of explain what it's trying to do for you, and so that helps you kind of get these color theory ideas that sometimes I think come naturally to miniature painters, but other times you're like, you know, I paint certain models, and my wife will look at them and go like, they're all one color. Why'd you make his pants brown when the monster's brown? And I'm like, well, okay, I wanted them to look, dirty and but in order for the eye to be drawn to certain features, you want it to like contrast and pop off. So, she's pushed me to use color theory more to like create these, visually like capturing models instead of like this, all one color bland sort of figure. Yeah, it is a little bit more realistic maybe for everything to be kind of brown, different kind of shades of brown, but on a tabletop or doing artwork, you know, you want something visually captivating. I will say to get the eyes, just to kind of go over this real quick, I just put dots of white on the eyes. Once the dots of white dried, I went over that with a green wash. So they have kind of a green effect to them, and the sockets kind of got very dark. So that's it. That is the WizKids Zombie Brute. Will they grace our table next week in Bloodlords? We'll have to see. You'll have to see if you tune in Monday night, 6:30 Eastern, on the Elite Encounters channel, which you can see the banner above me there. It's in the recommended channels on my page. Be sure to tune in live for that. Again, 6:30 Eastern Monday, on 6 o'clock Eastern on Tuesday. The Soul Sever campaign will be continuing its quest for various icons of ascendancy. Um, and then I'll be back next week for more Barnabas brushes. Uh, and I don't think that this was a spoiler. You guys saw these giant zombies were behind that cage. So, yeah, they're coming for you next week. Like I said, be sure if you're to follow the channel here if you haven't already. And when you're over at Elite Encounters, be sure to follow the Twitch channel over there. Subscribe to the YouTube channels. That all helps us out immensely. And until then, everybody have a great evening. Be safe out there. Good night.